Hey, Bigger Pockets, it's Matt. So there's two things you can't get away from. That's like the joke that they make, death and taxes. So today we're definitely not going to talk about death. We're going to talk about real estate tax. And a lot of people in BP talk about income tax, but real estate tax is one that really, if you know how it works and you know how to work the system, if you will, or use it to your benefit, it's a way to increase your cash flow quite a bit. And also just if you want to look at it another way, just to pay your fair share and make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. So today we're going to talk about real estate taxes, how they're calculated, and how you can get your taxes adjusted. Now, here's a little disclaimer. I do most of my operations in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I know very well how taxes work in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I am told by my landlord and property owner friends all across the country that taxes work the same way they do in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I've talked through the process with them, but I can't guarantee that little nuances, or maybe even the whole system's completely different where you are. So you should definitely look into it. But I think that today's video should give you guys a good understanding of tax calculations and how they're valued and how things go, especially in PA and New Jersey, but also in other areas too. But just the underscore there is check your local town's website, maybe even call your tax assessor and talk to them about it. But here we go. So real estate taxes are calculated like this. There is a number called your tax assessment. Your property assessment. That's not your appraisal. That's a different number. Your assessment is what the town is saying that the property is valued at. It is a dollar figure that they are allocating towards your real estate. Okay? And from that number, they calculate your real estate taxes. Now, there are towns that have not reassessed their real estate in like 30, 40 years. I've seen properties that are worth and sold for like $500,000 that have a tax assessment of 30, 40K. Okay? So there's that sometimes towns don't reassess, sometimes they do. We just went through a reassessment here in Trenton. And in Lancaster County, where we own an apartment complex, we went through a reassessment as well. Those two things were the inspiration of today's video that I wanted to share with you some learnings and some lessons and experiences I got out of that whole thing. Okay, so let's say your property is assessed at $100,000. Okay, now what the town does is they then take that number and throw it into a big pool and say, okay, in Trenton, New Jersey, actually that I happen to know the number, Trenton added up their assessment for all their property in Trenton this year, and they came up with a number of $2.9 billion. Put your pinky there, $2.9 billion. That's what the entire city is valued at. All the real estate that they have here in the city, that's the value they put on the property. Again, not necessarily what it would sell for on the market, but that's the number they decided to allocate to that real estate for their tax purposes. Okay, so they take that $2.9 billion and then they take the budget for the town. Well, Matt, what compromises the budget? Okay, well, remember, real estate taxes is the primary source of revenue for most counties and towns. Okay, not for the states. States make sales tax and they get money elsewhere, but most of the time, real estate taxes, this is one of those asterisks, this could differ in your state, but where I've done business, real estate tax contributes to the budget for things like schools and roads and the mayor's salary and for all kinds of different contributions that keep the town going. Everything, like I said, everything from the roads to the lights to all kinds of different stuff that keep the town moving is real estate taxes. So all those costs get summed up into a budget. Most towns, by state and federal regulations, are not allowed to change their budget unless it's a total literal and act of Congress. They're not allowed to change their budget, but by a couple of percentage a year. Okay, so the way they determine your real estate taxes is they take the assessment for the entire town and they divide that into the budget. And so they say, okay, for every dollar of value in the town, that property should be responsible for a percentage of tax or the contribution to the town. Okay, so you take the budget and you divide it by the total assessment for all the real estate in the town. Trenton, New Jersey, would be $2.9 billion, and that comes up with a percentage, and this is called the mill rate. Okay, some people call it the tax rate, but that's like that's what it really is. But if you want to speak tax assessor and get them all excited because you're speaking their language. It's called the mill rate, okay? Or millage rate. Okay, that number, the millage rate for the town, multiplied by the assessment for your property equals your real estate tax. Now, there is something called a correction factor that a lot of towns use if they haven't reassessed in a really long time. They'll take this assessment and multiply it by the correction factor, and that's a cheap way that they get around not having to go around and reassess every year and change the value. Because what happened during the real estate boom? Well, during the real estate boom, all these property values, quote unquote, changed. Even though property sale prices fluctuate quite a bit, the town still tries to keep up with property value, even though they acknowledge that this isn't a direct value of it. They use things like correction factors to come up with that. Like Trenton's correction factor up until the reassessment was 0.83, meaning if your assessment is $100,000, you multiply that by 0.83, then by the tax rate to equal your taxes. Okay? It gets confusing, and if I'm losing you, forgive me, but that correction factor goes away every time they reassess, and then towns, to keep up with property values, will throw in a correction factor every year just to kind of keep up with things. And this could be 0.83, it could be 1.2, it could be some number to adjust this assessment. And it's a cheap way of them getting out from under doing the big thing, which is to send people out, whether it's the town's own people or hiring a third party to go and reassess the entire town. That means go door to door, which is what Trenton just did, and what Elizabethtown, which is in Lancaster County where we own that apartment complex, that's what they just did. And in Lancaster County, they sent somebody out and they reassessed the entire county. Can you imagine how many pieces of real estate that was? In Trenton, they just did it, and it's 27,000 pieces of real estate that they did. They hired a third-party company to do it. You can only imagine what that would have cost them, which is probably why they used that correction factor, but they got forced to do it by the state to do that reassessment. So when they reassess, here's what happens. And if you guys have been around in business for long enough, you're going to get a letter in the mail saying, "Hi, Mr. Property Owner, we just reassessed your property, and you were valued at $100,000, but we've decided that your property, we're going to reassess you at $130K. Okay, so before you fall out of your chair and says, "Oh my goodness, my taxes are going to go up 30%. Well, let me tell you a real life story. At our apartment complex, they assessed us before the reassessment. Our valuation was $1.7 million. Okay, fine. That yielded a tax of about $48,000 a year on the apartment complex. Okay, now we got a letter saying your taxes were going up to $2.2 million. And at first, I fell out of my chair, but I said, you know what? Let me call the guy. I'm going to call the tax assessor and decide, because you can appeal these things, by the way, which we'll get into at the very end here. You can challenge this number, but you better have your act together before you go in there and talk to them, because because you're messing with their ability to collect budget, and so you just have your stuff together before you go and challenge this number. But I'll tell you how to do it at the end here. So I called the town and I said, "Hey, I see you've taken me from 1.7 to 2.2," and the guy said, "Yes, absolutely." I said, "Let me ask you a question. The town this property is in Elizabethtown. What was the overall increase in all the property in Elizabethtown?" And the guy said, "Why do you want to know that?" And I said, "I'll let you know." And he said, "Well, that's an interesting question. Let me get back to you." So he puts me on hold. You can hear him flipping through pages and breaks out his calculator and everything like that. And what happened was, if you added up all the new values of all the properties in Elizabethtown, it took to an increase of around 40%. Okay? What I wanted to know was, because if you're already ahead of me, then you're great. But if you're not, here's why I want to know. This number can't change. They can only change it by a couple of percent a year, right? If this number goes up by 40%, that has to go down, right? It's simple. Taking you guys back to Algebra 101, right? If this is constant, this goes up, this has to go down for this to continue to be equal, okay? So that means the millage rate goes down on all the properties if the assessment goes up. If the average assessment of everything in Elizabethtown went up by 40%, this is not 40%, right? This is about 30%, 35%, okay? That means that my millage rate applied to my new value is going to yield a lower tax, okay? It's going to yield lower real estate tax because I'm going to be at a lower mill rate, and I win. And so that's good. I like winning. And so that's what all this does. So when you get this number, your new assessment, what you guys want to do is figure out how that increase compares to the increase in value of the entire town. That's what you want to do. Don't freak out immediately when you get that letter. It's easy to do, but find out how it affects this. Because this is the number that matters. This kind of sort of doesn't matter, even though the town thinks it does. What really matters is the mill rate for a reassessment, and then obviously what really matters is real estate tax. Now, to follow it up is, if you're not in a reassessment and you find that you're probably, like, let's say I looked at a duplex today. A typical duplex in my trading area is somewhere between like $4,000 to $6,000 a year for real estate taxes. This duplex had real estate taxes at like $8,500. So when I looked at it, I said, okay, geez, I'll have to appeal those taxes. Here's what this looks like. Appealing your taxes, not during a reassessment time, is just calling up the town, and the towns have specific times you have to do it. Where I am in New Jersey, you have to do it by April 15th. It's funny, it's like tax day for your income tax, just so happens to be tax day for your income, for your real estate taxes too. You have to you appeal this number, saying, hey, I think that you've overassessed my property, and I'm going to prove it to you by showing these properties that have sold that have lower sell prices and lower square footage and everything like that, and you show them comps. It's as if you were trying to sell them the property at a lower number. You want to show them the lower valuation for the real estate that you have. And in most areas, you have to appear before a small court. The town will want to come out and inspect. In New Jersey, the county runs a court proceeding that this goes in front of, and they approve or deny it. And if you're not happy with what you get from them, you can take it all the way up to the state. There's lawyers that just focus on tax appeals, but you want to start with your local tax assessor, and they'll give you the paperwork to appeal this process. And you literally just show them printouts of comps of properties that have sold for lower numbers, and say, listen, these are duplexes that they're not worth 130. They're all worth 100, and so that's what my value should be. I'm requesting to get valued at a fair number of 100, and that's a take-home, is make sure you put a fair assessment, not just some pie-in-the-sky number that have them cut have them cut your taxes down to $500 when everybody around you is paying $5,000, right? Don't be greedy. Just ask them to be fair, and if it's not fair, then request that and be able to prove that it's not fair. And then they'll go through, and if you win, they'll change that assessment, which applied to the current mill rate, yields lower real estate taxes, that's what it's all about, is paying your fair share of real estate tax, but not a dime more than that. So, again, it's a bit complicated. There is some math. There is, equal signs and slight algebra in here and everything like that. So I hope you guys kept up with me. But understanding how real estate taxes work is a great way to, like I said, pay what you owe in real estate taxes, but not a bit more than that, and to stay on top of the game to make sure that the town doesn't slip one by you and start charging you more than what you do. So, I appreciate you guys watching. As always, leave comments and questions down below. Tell some stories about real estate tax appeals or assessments or questions, or tell me how it works in your state. If it's totally different, I want to hear about it. In the area that you're from, let's get in some chatter on that. Please leave some comments. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and have a great and profitable week.